About 4 years ago, Marcus came to me with a business idea. He had been thinking about it for months. He was excited in a way I had not seen from him about anything. In a long time he had done research. He had talked to a few people. He was ready to start putting money into it.
What was the idea?
A surf school, which sounds perfectly reasonable until you understand the specific location he had chosen, the financial model he had in mind, and the fact that he had no experience running any kind of business at all. On paper, it looked plausible. When you looked closer, there were 3 or 4 serious problems that I could see immediately.
What did you do?
I told him that same conversation. He had laid out the whole plan, and I sat with it for about 30 seconds. And then I said, I think there are some real problems here, and I want to talk through them with you before you go any further.
How did he respond?
Not well. Initially, he had come to tell me something he was proud of, and I had questioned it within the first minute. He went quiet in a particular way that I recognized as suppressed frustration, and we had an uncomfortable conversation that lasted about an hour. By the end of it, he had heard what I was saying. He did not fully agree, but he heard it.
And what happened with the idea?
He revised it significantly over the next 3 months, changed the location, found a business partner who had experience he lacked, adjusted the financial model. When he eventually launched it, it was a much more solid version of what he had first described. And about a year in, he told me that conversation had been one of the most useful he had had in the whole process.
So the direct early honesty was the right call.
In that situation, I believe it was, and I want to say why specifically, because I think the instinct many people have, which is to soften things, to wait, to let someone discover the problem themselves, often comes from a place of kindness, but functions as a form of avoidance. You are protecting yourself from their reaction, more than you are protecting them from the information.
I disagree with that.
I know. Tell me.
About 3 years ago, a close friend of mine was in a relationship that I could see from fairly early on was not good for her. Not dangerous, not dramatic, just quietly diminishing. She was becoming less herself in it. Smaller, less certain, and I could see it in a way that she could not, because she was inside it.
What did you do?
Nothing. For a long time I said nothing.
Why?
Because I had watched enough situations like that to know something important. When someone is in a relationship they have chosen, and they are still in the process of deciding what they feel about it, an outside voice saying this is wrong rarely lands as useful information. It lands as pressure, and what happens when people feel pressured about something they love, or something they have invested in, is that they defend it.
So you said nothing?
I stayed close. I was present. I asked questions that I hoped were useful without pressing toward a conclusion I had already reached, and I waited.
For how long?
About 8 months, and then she came to me herself. She had begun to see it. She asked what I thought, and I told her honestly at that point everything I had been thinking for 8 months, and she received it not easily, but she received it because she was ready to receive it.
My question to that is, what if she had not gotten there herself? What if you had waited 8 months, and she had stayed in it for another 2 years?
Then I would have said something eventually, but the threshold for when I would have spoken would have been much higher, the situation becoming actively harmful rather than quietly diminishing.
And in the meantime, she would have spent time in something that was making her smaller, without anyone naming it.
Without anyone whose naming she was ready to hear. That is the distinction I keep coming back to. The honest thing said at the wrong moment is not the honest thing landing. It is just sound. It does not penetrate. It bounces off, and the person is left with the information that you disapprove of their choice and nothing else.
I understand the argument, but I think it carries a risk that you are not fully accounting for. When you decide that someone is not ready to hear something, you are making a judgment about their capacity. You are positioning yourself as the one who knows what they can handle, and that is its own kind of arrogance, just a gentler looking one.
Or it is an act of care, knowing someone well enough to understand what they can receive and when.
How do you know the difference between care and avoidance in your own motivations? When you told yourself she was not ready, were you certain of that, or were you also somewhere relieved that you did not have to say the uncomfortable thing?
Probably both. I think that is an honest answer. I genuinely believe she was not ready, and I was also glad not to have the conversation. Both things were true.
And in my situation with Marcus, I was also doing something that was partly about me, Telling him immediately was partly because I genuinely believed he needed to hear it, and it was also because I am someone who finds withholding difficult, who becomes uncomfortable carrying for bulker.
So neither of us was acting from pure altruism.
No, we never are.
But I still think the outcome suggests something. Your friend revised his plan and was grateful. My friend heard the truth when she was ready for it and acted on it. Both of those are good outcomes through different routes.
The question is whether both routes reliably produce good outcomes. My concern with the waiting approach is that it depends heavily on the person eventually arriving somewhere themselves, which does not always happen.
And my concern with the immediate honesty approach is that it assumes the honest thing, said loudly and directly, is the same as the honest thing being received. It is not delivery matters, timing matters, the relationship the words travel through matters.
Let us talk about the English of this, because whatever position you hold on when to say the difficult thing, there is a vocabulary for how to say it when you decide the time has come.
The opening matters most. How you enter the conversation shapes whether what follows can be heard.
I want to say something that might be difficult to hear. I hope you know I am saying it because I care about you. That framing does several things. It warns the other person that something is coming. It locates your motivation in care rather than judgment, and it gives them a moment to prepare before the content arrives.
Can I share something I have been sitting with? That is softer. It positions what you are about to say as your own internal experience rather than a verdict about them. I have been sitting with something becomes, here is my process, not here is the truth about you.
I might be completely wrong about this and I want you to tell me if I am, but I have been noticing something and I think I would be doing you a disservice if I did not say it. That sentence is honest and humble at the same time. It admits the possibility of error while still moving forward with what needs to be said.
What comes after the opening also matters, the specificity of what you name not. I think this relationship is not good for you, but I have noticed that you seem less certain of yourself since this started. I do not know what that means, but I noticed it and I wanted to say so.
Naming the observation rather than the conclusion, giving the other person the evidence, and letting them do something with it, rather than delivering a verdict they have to either accept or reject.
Because a verdict requires a defense, an observation invites reflection.
That is a real distinction, and it changes what happens next in the conversation. With a verdict, the other person has to decide whether you're right or wrong with an observation. They can just sit with it.
There is also the question of what you do when the person pushes back, when they hear the difficult thing and they reject it.
You let them reject it, you say it once clearly, and you do not argue for it, because the moment you start defending your honest assessment of someone's situation, it stops being an offering and becomes a debate.
And debates about someone's own life are almost never won by the person not living it.
You say it, you let them respond, you make clear you are not going anywhere regardless of their response, and then you leave the door open. I just wanted you to know what I see. I am not going anywhere. Think about it, however you need to.
That last part, I am not going anywhere, might be the most important thing you can say alongside a hard truth, because the fear people have when they hear something difficult from someone they love is not only about the content, it is about whether the saying of it changes the relationship.
They need to know the truth, and the belonging can coexist.
That you can see something they do not want you to see and still be there.
Now I want to come back to our disagreement because I do not think we have resolved it, and I do not think we are going to.
We are not.
My position is that withholding something important from someone because you have decided they are not ready is a form of control dressed up as kindness. You are managing their reality, you are deciding what they get access to about their own life, and even if your timing proves correct, the choice itself carries a cost.
And my position is that the honest thing said without regard for readiness is not honesty serving the other person. It is honesty serving your own need to have said it. True, care includes attention to whether the person can actually receive what you are giving them. A truth delivered into a closed door does not open the door.
Both of those positions feel true to me, which is why I cannot fully settle on one.
That might be the honest answer. That this is not a question with a clean resolution. It depends on the relationship, the specific situation, the person, the moment, and your own honest reading of your own motivation.
Which requires knowing yourself well enough to see the difference between care and avoidance when they wear the same face.
Which is its own ongoing project.
Think of someone in your life who is in the middle of something you can see more clearly than they can. A relationship, a decision, a pattern. Have you said the difficult thing? Have you been waiting? And do you know honestly whether you are waiting for them or waiting for yourself?
And if you have said it, did you say it because it was the right moment? Or because you could not carry it any longer?
We're not going to tell you which approach is right because we genuinely do not agree. And we think that uncertainty is worth sitting with rather than resolving too quickly.
The honest thing about the honest thing is that knowing when to say it is as hard as finding the words.
Sometimes harder. I want to add one more dimension before we finish, because we have been talking about this as though it is primarily a question of timing, but there is also a question of relationship. The same difficult truth said by different people lands completely differently.
Completely, I would receive something from Way that I would not receive from an acquaintance, not because the acquaintance is wrong, but because We has earned the right, through years of being present, to say something that requires that kind of trust to land.
The credibility of the person saying it determines whether the difficult thing can be heard at all.
Which is why sometimes the most important preparation for saying the honest thing is not finding the right words. It is doing the work beforehand that makes you someone the other person can hear.
That is a long investment for a single conversation.
Relationships always are. You do not earn the right to say hard things in the moment, you earn it over time, through the smaller moments of honesty that have held, through showing up when it was inconvenient, through the accumulated evidence that what you say is coming from genuine care and not from judgment or self-interest.
And if you have not built that, the honest thing may still need to be said, but you should know that it will be harder for the other person to receive, and you should not be surprised if they cannot.
There is also a version of this that I want to name, which is the honest thing said to protect yourself rather than the other person. The brutal honesty that is actually a release of your own discomfort dressed as care.
I needed to tell you this. I could not keep it to myself, said by someone who actually means, I was uncomfortable carrying this, and I needed to put it down somewhere.
Which is a real thing that happens, and it is not the same as honesty in service of the other person.
How do you tell the difference? In your own motivations,
I ask myself, if I knew for certain that saying this would not make me feel any better, would I still say it? If the answer is yes, I am probably saying it for them. If the answer becomes less clear, I am probably saying it at least partly for myself.
That is a useful test.
It does not always produce a clean answer, but it is worth running.
There is one more thing we're saying about what happens when you say the difficult thing and it goes badly, when the person does not receive it, when they become defensive or they pull away, or the relationship suffers because of what you said.
That is a real risk. And anyone who acts as if honesty is always cost-free is not telling the whole truth about honesty.
Sometimes you say the thing you needed to say, and the other person is not ready for it, and the relationship pays a price, and you have to sit with that without knowing whether they will eventually come around, or whether the price was worth paying, or whether you were right about what needed to be said.
That uncertainty is part of what makes it hard. You are not only risking the comfort of the conversation, you are sometimes risking the relationship itself.
Which is why it requires real courage, not the easy courage of people who say honesty is always right, and the other person will thank you later, but the harder courage of knowing it might cost something and deciding to say it.
Or deciding to wait, knowing that the waiting also has a cost, and deciding that cost is the right one to bear right now.
Neither of us is backing down.
Neither of us is backing down.
Good. Think about someone in your life who is in the middle of something you can see more clearly than they can. Have you said the difficult thing? Have you been waiting? And whichever you have done, do you know honestly whether you are doing it for them or for yourself?
That is the question underneath the question. It usually is.